Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So tonight we're going to talk about 13 pillars of high performers. And when you're thinking about in a scope of your career, this is going to be a list of things that you should develop within yourself. This is what I focus on when I'm looking for reading material outside of religion or faith. But you have to have faith and you have to have work ethic to impact these things. So if you're looking for these pillars in the people that you're intending to hire, it could suggest better hires. It could suggest more resilient and dedicated personnel if your culture is right from a company perspective. These are the 13 pillars of the people you want and what you want to cultivate in the people that you have to have a better performance for yourself and for your company. So we'll start with resilience as number one. Okay, so resilience basically is when someone bounces back from setbacks with a constructive attitude and a positive attitude. Tough things are going to happen. And, my history has been in operations majorly. And I've always said that if something hasn't happened or something hasn't gone wrong, then you're not paying attention because there's always something going wrong. There's always something going south in operations or in business or in relationships. That is just the way things work, right? So you think the natural state is deterioration. When we're born, we are deteriorating and going to die. We're getting older every day that we're here, right? So everything follows that same life cycle. Resilience is necessary to go through the rough times and the seasonally difficult times. Some businesses are very highly based on seasonality. They may do the majority of their money in the first quarter or the last quarter of the year. So if that's the case, resilience is necessary to continue to stay motivated, build the pipelines, do what you need to do around supporting engineering and upgrading things outside of those seasons strategically. And the first component of that is resilience. The second is solving problems. Basically, you want people that approach problems rather with creative solutions. I always have subordinates. I have an open door policy. So my expectation is anybody that works with me or for me knows that any given time they can come to me and talk about a problem they have. Anyone that's ever worked for me knows the first question after they tell me is, what have you decided to do or what's your thought? Or do you have a suggestion around a resolution to this problem? You want people that solve problems and want to solve problems and want to do the work to get through the yeses to get to the point that they can solve the problems, okay? When you're hired as a consultant, you're going to companies that don't have these people, so you're trying to help them solve them problems themselves without having to go into the investment of hiring and training the team that does this specifically well. So if you treat this as a building block for your team members, you're going to build a stronger team that basically outperform others because you naturally do what needs to be done for the benefit of the business. So solve problems is number two. Number three is take ownership, accept responsibility for their actions and their outcomes. If you are in a place where you're being measured on your specific productivity and you're measured based on those outcomes, that is a fair situation. It's a difficult spot when you're measured on somebody else's performance, and that can become toxic. So what you're trying to build is a perfect employee or a perfect culture, people that take ownership, that take responsibility. They're not trying to pass the buck. They're going to say, hey, I made this decision. This is what I learned. And that's what you should be thinking. If they're a good teammate and you know they're not trying to be maniacal or menacing, they're trying to do the best thing that they can do for you and the organization, then stuff's going to happen. It's going to go wrong. People are going to have failures. And in that case, you want to allow people to fail forward. If you don't know what failing forward is, there is a great book written by John C. Maxwell on failing forward specifically. And I suggest that any leader reads that book because if you're going to have career people, they're going to fail at some time. You yourself are going to fail at some time. That's how that works. It's just the natural state of things. So they have to be able to take ownership and have things handled. The next is genuine humility. Openly receives and acts on feedback. Humility is best when trained, which means you're giving people regular positive and negative feedback together so they can learn from the bad things and get some kudos or celebrations on the good things. That's what cultivates a culture that allows for people to feel psychologically safe. And that is where humility comes from. They can be vulnerable and there's no risk in being vulnerable because they know that you believe they have your best intentions in mind. And that's important. If you're somewhere where that's not the case, you need to get out because that's a toxic culture and ultimately it's going to do you wrong if you stay there long enough. Next is impactful communication. You share ideas clearly and you listen actively. Active listening and sharing ideas clearly so people understand and engagement around that is impactful communication. It's not volume. right? It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Quality communication is impactful because people are listening actively and they're sharing clear ideas and ideals around those ideas. Next is efficient execution. They prioritize tasks and focus on delivering results. That's what you want, okay? You want efficient execution. If there's more talking, it's that measure twice and cut once. It should be done before we start. That way we have a proper idea and we learn from what falls out. And next time we try that again, we're coming from a better place, a more educated situation. So that's efficient execution with the timeline and a desired expectation that's known before you go into it. Next is dynamic adaptability. I think adaptability would have been fine. Quickly adjust to new information and altered circumstances. Adaptability is required because there's something going wrong all the time. Okay? Teammates leave, people die, things break. That's just the status of the world. That's the natural way things go. So adaptability is required. You don't let it be a stumbling block. You stride that and you learn from what's there. And then next time that happens again, you can teach somebody else that's newer than you how to get past that. And that's where that comes from. That's where that work equity comes from, where you're building that volume of books in your mind on things that you've succeeded with, and then you're going to repeat and share that with those coming after to train them to do the same things. After that's positive mindset. I tell you all the time, that's a superpower, a positive mindset. Positive people get through everything. People that are negative, they find a problem with every solution, right? So encourages a hopeful and confident outlook. It's not being blind. It's not being naive. It's just being positive. Hey, we're going to do as good as we can do with what we got, and that should get us where we need to be. That's positive mindset. Emotional intelligence. We've done several videos on that here on the channel. Please take a look. We've done videos on all these things on the channel. Please take a look at the channel for more videos if any of these things are things that interest you. Emotional intelligence talks about managing emotions to maintain professional relationships and positive work environment. Basically, it says that you can't be triggered. You don't overreact. You're a mature human being that acts like a mature human being. Imagine that, right? So emotional intelligence goes into different types of intelligence. I share this book all the time, Successful Intelligence. If you want to study a book that tells you, how those things work, how they stack up, different types of intelligence, that is a good way to start. Also, if you're wanting to learn more about yourself and you do some personality tests, there's a video on that on the channel. It basically goes to things that let you grade yourself on where you're at on these things, and it lets you know what you need to cultivate. So please look at that video, seek that out here on the channel if you want to find more information on that. Next is strategic self-awareness, and it says they recognize personal strengths and weaknesses. They add additional words here. You don't need strategic there, just self-awareness. Self-awareness says you're studying yourself, you're reading in the areas that you need to develop, you're finding mentors in areas you need to develop, and then you're mentoring others in areas that you're better at, because you teaching them is going to help you continue to develop yourself as well. So that self-awareness recognizes personal strengths and personal weaknesses. And you have both, okay? One of the interview questions I ask people, all right, what's your biggest weaknesses? I'm always on time. I love to work and don't like to leave work. I never miss. That's not weaknesses. That's annoying. Everyone has great weaknesses or some weaknesses. Self-awareness could be one where you say, hey, I'm always learning. It's because I'm self-aware, because I know that I have needs. And somebody could ask, what does that mean? Well, I haven't had success at finding true mentors in the past, or I haven't had great success with not letting things get me upset from time to time, or whatever that may be. That's how you know yourself, okay? You need to be able to name your weaknesses, whatever that may be. I'm overly protective. In business, that can be dangerous because you protect your teams from people that would be in a poor cultural situation or a place that's not a great place to be. You'll protect your teams and put them, out of harm's way, and you take that hit yourself, which some people don't have that resilience. So if you know something about your type, your personality type, that's another thing to check out. It will tell you kind of how you need to target these things to improve your situation. Okay. So that last one was self-awareness, recognize personal strengths and weaknesses. Next is proactive learning, seek self-improvement and self-enhancement. I already mentioned that several times. I lived in a world where there was a lack of mentors, so now books take up 3 parts of my house, because books I can learn something from. Every single book, just like every person I meet, can teach me something. Okay, so I try to learn that from that person and move on. My idea is if I get to a place, I'm not making the mistakes that other people have already made, because I have them tell me what they did first, and then I start at where they ended off in a better place because they've shared their knowledge with me and what they've learned. So that's how you should be looking, proactive learning. Next is sincere collaboration, values team achievements over individual accolades. Collaboration is fine without sincere. If you're going to collaborate, you should be sincere. That should be your mental outlook. And I think that you should value team achievements, because the more you celebrate your teams, the more engaged you're going to be. Okay, so collaboration values team achievements over individual accolades. Individual accolades are still necessary, because that's how you lead teams. You show them how to win. And then when people do have achievements that are individually ranked, you celebrate them, and that makes other people want to do that too. So that's a good suggestion. Next is empathetic leadership. Builds trust through understanding and supporting team. It goes back to the old saying, nobody cares how much you care. Oh, I said it wrong. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So, and that's true. And you go into a place, like when I was turning around companies for a living for a decade there, I went in first and I corrected the safety things first. So before I ever said a word, these people already knew I cared about them, because the first thing I did was change things around so they were protected. And then I went into process and management and all those things outside of that so I could better serve those people. And then I went into leadership components after I've assessed a team to build up the best teammates so that I have the best leadership options within that facility. So that's how you have empathetic leadership. You build trust through understanding and supporting your team. You give your team the benefit of the doubt. You come from a positive mindset. You're adaptable to what they're going to tell you. You make sure that they're trying to understand the most efficient ways to execute their jobs. And you have impactful communication. So you set the expectations before you start the conversation, right? So all these things are tied together and do help one another, one to the other. So that's the 13 pillars of high performers. I think that's great material there. Please take a screenshot of that thumbnail. This will be the thumbnail here. This came from Justin Measham off of LinkedIn. I've used that gentleman's stuff, I think, 2 times before. So some good stuff there. Maybe follow him on LinkedIn. I do. But that is some great suggestions around 13 pillars of high performers. I'll tell you this, when I measure people out, I'm measuring on these things, okay? And if it comes down to the wire on you deciding one person over the other, these are the character traits that I'm going on. If they have the same work history, the same background, the same everything else, then I'm looking at these things to be selective around that, because I want to select the person who is farther down the road on these things and has learned this and learned the importance of these things. And I also want to make the suggestion around person that has the intelligence to take care of the team. When you go into a business and they don't make taking care of their teams their top priority, they're going to have a very tough time, because it's going to consistently turn over. Their quality is going to go up and down because of the turnover, and ultimately their customer base is going to diminish because of the quality variations, etc. So this is extremely important. These 13 concepts in business stand out more when I see businesses that are failing, and the ones that are doing well, it's because they have this stuff buttoned up. I'm Ben. If you like information such as these, please subscribe. Please share the videos. I appreciate your time. Be good.